Throughout media and its many variations, we can find several different formats and styles for how a writer can convey a story. With every writer comes a pretty significant question. How can I create a story that conveys a journey? In writing, there have been a few examples of masters of literature printing these worlds onto paper in ways that actively draw us into books. Movies typically do this more often as they've got significantly more visually oriented platforms, but there's one form of media, typically reserved from the eyes of most, that is vastly underestimated in the ways that it can convey that all-important core question. This expression of media is video games. Now, admittedly, from a news or general public perspective, if we were to look up video games online, it would hardly be the form of media you would choose for expressing a story. Understandably, big-name video games like Call of Duty or Battlefield have dominated this field effectively since their release, and have such framed the gaming industry with an image of extreme competitiveness and, of course,
What's your problem, Grim? What is your problem? Missile alone ramp. Missile alone ramp.
Si esto no se esperaba, visite el sitio web oficial de Microsoft.
More and more people say the level of violence on video games.
However, I believe that this expression has something much more to offer the viewers, perhaps even more than a book or a movie can. And there's a very specific design philosophy behind this, which I will cover here, but for right now, we need to start with what makes a journey so significant to media, especially in these stories. Jalopy is a polygon-style game based on a road trip from Berlin to Turkey after the fall of the Iron Curtain. The game progresses by you passing through countries with your car, the Leica 601, a mock-up of a real-life car called the Trabant. You play as a silent character, moving across Eastern Europe with their uncle, seeing sights and slowly but surely writing your own story. Along your journey, you pass through several small towns, selling goods you find on the road, using that money to buy accommodation and upgrade your car. This is where the design and arguably the main selling point of the game is, to drive and upgrade your car from a second-hander to an all-rounder machine. However, this car isn't exactly part of the story. Technically speaking, you could replace the car with any vehicle and the story would remain unchanged. So, if the vehicle isn't vital to the story the game is trying to convey, why are we forced to use it throughout the entire journey? Looking more closely, we can see that this was initially intended. The game, of course, was designed to be beaten eventually. So, how is there any value left for the player if the story is over? Well, in the Steam Achievements tab, there are a few different goals which stood out for me. Drive 10,000, 50,000, and 100,000 kilometers. These things might seem a little bit redundant and drawn out at first. Why would anyone want to drive 100,000 kilometers in this game for a little icon? But it's not exactly the point that the game is trying to convey. To better illustrate this, let me show you another example with a similar structure. Heat Death Survival Train is another game that took my interest about a year ago when it was first announced. The idea of driving through a barren, snow-capped landscape in a futuristic train that, keep in mind, was fully customizable really took my imagination by storm. I first played the demo back in 2024 and it blew me away with its detail and its features, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on the full version of the game when it came out. But to this day we're still being fed pieces, which I won't spoil just in case you had plans to play it sometime soon. Where this game comes into this video is that it has a very similar storytelling method as Jalopy, despite being set in a different place, different time, maybe not in the same universe. And the reason why I say this is because the way the story is told and the way that the journey carries out is nearly the exact same. You have a story that unfolds slowly, location by location, that you move through in a vehicle, in this case a train, that you could replace with, once again, anything. The only noticeable difference is the game's level progression system. In Heat Death, you slowly move through the same map, uncovering what happened to what appears to be your former colleagues, who apparently either perished or escaped on a similar train to what you're travelling in. The threats, environment stay the same, constantly hostile and uninhabitable. Whether in Jalopy, each border you cross, the map changes entirely. But what does that actually mean? Does it matter what the story is, and if so, how does it affect the journey of the game? What about a game that doesn't exactly have a strong narrative, but more emphasis on the journey itself? Astroneer is a game that is, admittedly, not exactly widely known in the gaming industry, especially in the general community. However, in my opinion, it is still one of the gems of video games and also plays well into the idea of this video. Astroneer is a very sandbox-oriented game in that it gives you very little guidance towards completing the story and mostly relies on you to be able to find your own way. This means that at the beginning of the game, there's not a quest marker telling you where to go. There's only a small list of things to do for rewards, but other than that, instructions are few and far between. The only true way of seeing everything the game has to offer is by either checking the research tree or the mission board. Whichever one you look at prompts you to either go out and do more things to complete more missions, or venture further out to gather more exotic materials and research. The more exotic things you return to base, the more cool toys you eventually get to unlock and play with. It's a very addicting cycle to see something that you want on the tech tree, seeing what it needs, venturing out to go and get it, and unlocking it. However, eventually you'll stumble across a storytelling element of the game, whether it is a small glance or a full-on investigation. No matter how you are introduced to these plot points, the questions still remain the same. What is it? What does it do? How do I use it? I won't spoil the story because it's best experienced without prior knowledge. However, story aside, the journey to the end of the game is quite a unique one. Unlike Heat Death and Jalopy, the player technically isn't bound by anything. You could just choose to ignore these storytelling elements and focus on building a giant factory. The journey is what the player is placed in, and it's up to them how to experience it, whether it be like this, or like this. It has a story, but it's up to you how to read it. The start of the game and the end of the game are the exact same for every single player, but how you get there matters to no one else but yourself. The main idea, at least in my opinion, is that story games are extremely effective at conveying a journey because they force the player to advance the story. It's not an actor on a screen or a character in a book. It's you. When one reads a story, sometimes they can't help but think, I wonder what they'll do next. Whether in a video game with a significant journey, the actual game itself will ask you, what will you do next? No one else here is going to keep the story moving other than you, because in a game with a journey, most of the story is placed around you and the character you play as. Because you're the only one controlling the main character of the story, it's easy to feel like you've actually been on an adventure, whether you've sailed 1,000,000 miles or gone to a completely different planet. You as a person feel like your character's been through a lot simply because you've been the one controlling them, literally putting you, the reader, into the character's position. That is, in my opinion, the best way to show a story that conveys a journey.